you deal with an overly friendly neighbor who asks too many questions about your life when you happen to be outdoors at the same time? Story 1, if you're not very open to chat, just keep things polite yet quick. It's nice to have a good relationship with your neighbors. If they do delve into personal questions, just say that a bit personal. I'd rather not talk about that. Most important thing is to be polite. Don't be or act standoffish when it's not necessary. Honestly, just use some common sense. Don't be a Redditor, is all I'm saying. Story 2, wow. The responses, some good soon are clearly trying to be funny, but some are disturbing. Look, it is important to be on good, if not, friendly terms with your neighbors. You will have them in your life for a long time, whether you like it or not. The responses that recommend short, vague answers where you follow up with questions of your own are the best. You may very well discover a new friend, or you may both realize you don't click and you will naturally not take any further, but you'll be left with a neighbor that is at least on good terms. Remember, they may be the person to notice you being robbed when you're not home, or notice the smoke from fire first, or be accepting of the noise from a large party you decide to throw. There could be a lot of reasons they're talkative, and not all of them are them just being nosy or they could be genuinely interested, lonely, had a bad neighbor in that house previously, etc., to name a few. Wow, this really blew up. Thank you for all the awards, gold and silver. That's never happened to me. I try to read all the comments, and clearly the whole concept of community, neighbor, friendship, loneliness, etc. has struck a nerve. I hope that Opie finds something useful and relevant to his situation. Story 3, I've always just casually said, that's kind of personal when said with a smile. It usually works, said it notes 1. Thank for the awards 2. Some people have pointed out that the kind of isn't necessary. And in a sense, they're right. It's just how my speech usually sounds. And I find that the kind of is easier to say as a non-confrontational person. Story 4, I live in an extremely religious community, Mormons, so this happens all the time. I used to try to be vague and give hints, but the best technique I've found is this one. I am kind of a private person, and then I compliment them on something I've noticed, nice grass, or hey, thanks for checking on me. I know it comes from a good place. Story 5, look, honestly, I have very poor social awareness and no filter at all, so they would probably hear about how my chronic illnesses have resulted in constipation so bad that I have to be on laxatives for 6 months to restart my bowels and the consequences that all of this has on my life. I fully accept that I am the reason that I have very few friends. Story 6, I had an old neighbor like this once. It was back when I lived in a small conservative town in the U.S. Midwest, still pretty freshly married and also freshly on my own with my wife. Anyway, my wife and I would always be sitting on the front porch of the place we lived, upper-lower styler duplex. We both worked a lot. Seeing as how we were working minimum wage jobs at the time, we had to work a lot, so we could pay bills and eat and put some money back, so the little time we had to relax and unwind together was pretty precious to us, still is TBH. So a few months pass of us living at this place, and one day, this very tall, very bald, black man just walked up onto the porch while we're sitting there relaxing. We've had a pretty good amount of sketchy people see us on the porch and either ask us to bum smokes, or if they can have some loose change, or if we know where to get any good drugs. I only mention his race because this is a very conservative town in the pretty rural Midwest. We kind of look at each other and him as he's walking up and say, "Hi, how are you?" Not knowing what to expect. He replies, "Hey, how y'all doing tonight? My name is Thomas, but y'all can just call me T. I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. I live in that house right over there," holds his arm up and flips his hand down to point at a nearby house very effeminately. "And I just wanted to come meet the neighbors and let y'all know if you need anything ever, just let me know. Welcome to the neighborhood, us. Oh, hey, thanks for introducing yourself, man. My name is Atlas Ismason, and this is my wife, Atlas Alsamason. That's very cool of you to walk over here and do that. We've only met our upstairs neighbor so far, and that's because I work with him and we have some beers with him occasionally. Think the neighborhood is nice so far, etc., etc. Small talk. His response to this to me was, "Oh, you mind if I come and smoke a cigarette with y'all and talk for a second? We'll fill y'all in on all the dirty details of the neighborhood. Nothing too bad, really sorry. It's not dirty, but I'll just tell y'all a little about the other neighbors." Being too polite to say no so far at this point. "Yeah, sure, come on up and have a seat wherever you'd like." So he grabs a chair beside me and sits down, looking at my wife. "So is you two really married, us holding hands and wearing our wedding bands?" "Yeah, working on our first year pretty soon, Thomas." Still looking at my wife, MMPH, "Girl, you're one lucky lady to be married to a man that looks as good as this. Am not gay or anything, but gwirl if you didn't say you was married. Just now I'd be trying to get him to drink some beers with right now." Now looking at me, bashfully Anyway, I'd say anywhere from once a week to once every few months, Thomas would randomly see us sitting on the porch and come up and make vague flirtatious remarks to me and tell us how wonderful we were and how happy he was that we were neighbors. He eventually came out to us officially, LOL, and was so happy that we were still accepting of him, even though he was a sinner. He cried and told us we were the biggest blessing he ever had in his life. Many, many times he was annoying, and we just wanted to sit on our porch alone and enjoy the peace and quiet. But as a gay black man in a small, mainly white, very conservative town, he needed our support more than we needed the peace and quiet those nights. And oddly enough, even though he was an incredibly bright man in a lot of regards, he always seemed to say something that was incredibly insightful and thoughtful to what was going on with us, either at work or with distant relatives, or something that there is literally no possible way of him knowing about us. And he always said it about himself. He drank too much and smoked too much weed, but he was always just looking to escape the pain of literally everyone being unaccepting of who he was as a person, and him just wanting to be liked. Anyway, there isn't a happy ending or a sad one. My wife and I moved back out west to be near family and finish school after we had our daughter, and that was the last I heard from Thomas. We exchanged phone numbers so that we could stay in touch, but he never contacted me, and the 2 times I tried to contact him, he was out of minutes or had maybe gotten a new phone number. Story 7. That neighbor. I'm an older lady who lives alone, and I'm just trying to make a connection with my neighbors. If something happens to me or my pets, I'd like someone nearby to at least notice they haven't seen me in a while or worry about my pets at it. Wow. Thanks for the swag. Second edit, come on over neighbors, and making brownies. Story 8. Try having a neighbor who tracks when you leave and arrive back home. Talks to your boss about your work schedule and when you're actually supposed to be at home. Asking my boss if I had COVID when she noticed I hadn't left the house in a couple days. The list goes on and on. I hate nosy neighbors. Is your life really that miserable you have to worry about strangers? I told her off, and we are currently looking to move. Some people are just bad neighbors. Story 9. I made friends with my neighbor at the beginning if lockdown. Now, whenever I go out front of my house, he comes out every single time. Even when we just open our front door, he comes out and just sits. One time, Amazon dropped a package off when I was working on the side of the house. He opened his window, proceeded to yell to me that Amazon had delivered a package. I don't go out the front door anymore. Unless going to my car, I just hang out around back and even take my dogs on walks leaving through and arriving through the backyard. Story 10. Some of the responses you've gotten don't seem to understand that there are just people like this that don't respect personal boundaries and can't pick up on subtle hints like one-word answers. The way I deal with these people is by humoring them for a bit, using some of the tactics already mentioned, giving short, uninterested answers. If they don't catch the hints I'm dropping, they'll pretend to have something else to do. Go inside. The premise of this question is why the phrase good fences make good neighbors exists. Try to make your boundaries clear, and barring that, build a tall fence so they can't see through you. Story 11. I think maybe they're not so much intrusive, just trying to spark a conversation. I would stop what you're doing, give them 5 minutes of undivided attention. You don't have to reveal too much, just get to know each other, then wrap it up with an all right, good to see you, I got to get back to this. Story 12. Ask them about their life. The same way they do. Edit, okay, look what I meant to say is bother them as much as they do to you, so then they'll see that and then stop, or they either spend so much time talking about themselves that you don't even have to share anything personal. Story 13. My partner and I just moved into a house and got cornered by a neighbor for 30 minutes. My Midwest sense of guilt needs to clarify a few things. We were on our way to do stuff. This neighbor started talking and didn't stop for 30 minutes. I'm not exaggerating, half an hour, non-stop talking at us, not with us. We tried every little polite out we could take, plenty of whelps and damn, that's crazies, and even a few God, well, we should really get going. I even started leading the conversation into the middle of the street, hoping a passing car would separate us. None if it worked. We only finally made it out of there because it got dark. I decided the next time this happens, I'm just going to tell her politely, but firmly, that I need to take a dump and then just walk away. Edit, the replies to this are hilarious. I tried every single one of these things. I have no explanation why it took so long to finally end the convo. Story 14. I bought 86 acres in the middle of nowhere. My closest neighbor is 5 miles away. So far, it seems to be working. Just got to get the house built. Well, Story 15. I don't mind overly friendly neighbors as much. Giving a short, vague answer to certain questions you're not comfortable with is probably best. The problem I have currently with a new neighbor is that they are not respectful of others' space or property. They have over 7 adults and 5 minors living in the house. Cars parked in front of my home, RVs, old scrap car in their driveway, city violation. They let their kids run all around my driveway, play with my doorbell, throw rotten fruit in my backyard. One of the adult men likes to leave his trash in front of my driveway, constantly yells at night. Power washes all of his cars and RVs close to my driveway all day. Several neighbors I've spoken have had nothing but negative things to say about them, but no one does anything about it. I try to actively ignore people like this as they're renting the home, and I have no idea how long for, but my patience is running thin. Story 16, I have a neighbor who I legitimately hide from because I hate talking to her. She'll keep you outside for like half an hour. They'll duck behind the dumpster and wait for her door to close. I have a dog who is scared of PPL, so if I have her outside, it's easy to be like, oh, sorry, my dog is dragging me away, I know him, but I hate people. I have zero interest in their lives. My favorite neighbors are ones who never ever talk to me. Story 17, I've learned this lesson a very hard way. I've known my neighbor 56M for around 15 years and considered him a family friend. He watched me grow up, and our families have even taken a vacation together. He was always nosy and asked personal questions, but I shrug it off as that's just how he is. That was until my girlfriend 20F moved in with us. He slowly became more and more friendly with her, asking her where she works, about her family, and slowly changing his personality to hers. I suspected something was going on. Keep in mind he is married with a daughter still in high school. One day, I came home from work and my girlfriend was sharing a beer and talked with him in his garage. Nothing out of the normal. He frequently invited us over for beers and whatnot, so I thought nothing of it. A few days later, my girlfriend comes to me in tears, and not of sadness, but of frightened tears after what seemed like forever. She told me that the night she had a beer with him, he told her horrible things, that he wanted her brains out and steal her and tie her up. He's thought about breaking into our home and taking advantage of her. He has broken her car and was leaving her love notes. My once friendly neighbor went crazy. I confronted him about the situation, and he admitted to it and told me I was no good and did not deserve her. And keep in mind, he told me this in his backyard with his wife and daughter home. Fast forward a month later. In this time, he hasn't showed his face since. My girlfriend gets off work early, and as she is walking into our house, he was hiding in the bushes asking if she was afraid of him. She ran inside, and we had to call the police. And for the next 2 months, he sat on his property line next to ours with a small foldable chair and just watched our house. So the best way to deal with an overly nosy neighbor is to cut the convo short and walk away. Wear headphones when you go outside or pretend to be on the phone. Story 18, end every sentence with the words, as was foretold in the prophecy. I don't know if that'll help with your neighbor specifically. It's more sort of general life tip. Story 19, be nice and endure the polite small talk like adults do. Sometimes you could choose not to be as socially inept. It's your neighbor, not a stranger. Being on good terms is beneficial. And maybe you could even make the neighbor's day. Story 20, say, oh, why do you ask, in a smiling, friendly, kind of curious way? Or if you don't care about being G-friendly, there's why would you ask me that? Or the evasive, I don't know what's new with you, possibly in a teasing manner, G. You ask all the questions, huh? Story 21, I say something like, oh, I don't want to get into that. But have you heard about so and so? Or if I really don't want to talk at all, he'll say that I'm not feeling too well and we'll catch up another time. Then if this happens again, they'll pretend to take a phone call. After a while, hopefully they get the hint, and if not, then I guess I would just have to move. Story 22, put your finger up to your mouth and say SHHHH. The aliens are listening, then point to any scar on your body and say this is where they inserted the chip. Story 23, gray rock. Keep your answers short, simple, and vague. Examples, what did you do this weekend? And not much. The conversation will eventually fizzle out. They'll get the hint. Story 24, I moved. It was to the point she had binoculars out watching us. I have anxiety and can't do anything if someone watches me. I love work and working on cars. I could do neither without her sitting on her porch and watching me. My yard wasn't big enough to build a garage, so I had to work outside. She would catch you outside and talk for 30 minutes. Plus side, we made a butt-load of cash off the house sale, moving to a house with 2 garages and only one neighbor a couple hundred yards away. Story 25, moved in and added a flagpole to my front yard. Nosy neighbor comes over, gonna hoist Old Glory up there right nice. I said, no, I like to fly flags of the countries I've been to. I get a flag from each one as a reminder of my trip. A few sports teams, and other ones too. Everyone flies the U.S. flag, and while I like it, I find it boring. She said, well, I'm sure you'll have a Trump flag up till November at least. I said, no, that would be the very last flag I would ever fly, I assure you. She had no response and has not come back. They are, however, installing their own flagpole now. Story 26, headphones in, sunglasses on. I had a nosy neighbor. I set boundaries. Then I used this technique. He finally understood that I didn't want to be bothered. Now he doesn't bother me unless absolutely necessary. Story 27. First, I must say, many of the answers on here made my day. Funny people today. Anyways, I am generally a magnet for weirdos, so I have oodles of experience with this. The simplest way to deal with a nosy person is turn a lot of the questions back at them. Oh, thanks for asking, but I really need to know where you bought that fern. It's so neat looking. Oh, my job is boring. Tell me what you do for a living. Most of these busybodies are looking for info to tell others. They're so bored in their lives they have to know everyone else's business. Either turn the question back at them or practice giving vague answers that say nothing Oh, we've been married a while. Time flies. If you can or don't want to talk to them, make sure you have very visible headphones on, even if you're not actually listening to anything. Don't remove them when they speak to you. Either just lift one each time they speak or leave them on, and you'll really uncomfortably loud when responding. Occasionally misunderstand what they said because you couldn't hear them. If they push it, say you're listening to classes to learn a foreign language for work. The boss put you on a deadline to learn it. Pick an obscure language. If all that doesn't work, those extra special nosy people, start feeding them really strange information that they'll sound weird repeating to the neighbors. Of course, the best remedy is to just talk to them for a minute. Then excuse yourself and tell them you really have to get back to whatever you're doing. Then step away. But it's sometimes fun to mess with the annoying ones. Story 28, I hold up my index finger for a second and then pull my cell phone from my pocket and pretend I have a call. I mouth, it's my boss, to my neighbor and launch into a series of huss. And got it into the phone as I slowly wander back into my house or to my car. Works every time. Story 29, I usually go with making them uncomfortable. My mom's cousin asked when me and my wife are going to have kids, so I said I didn't know you thought so much about me and he never asked again. Story 30, lie and make up super crazy. Remember when Tony Soprano had his neighbor hold a bag of rocks telling him it was something very important and he needed him to hold on to it for him for a while. Story 31, you ever been in a storm? Wally, I mean a real storm, not a thunderstorm, but a storm of fists raining down on your head, blasting you in the face, pummeling you in the stomach, hitting you in the chest, so hard you think your heart's going to stop. You ever been in a storm like that, Wally? Story 32. First thought, always leave the house wearing headphones, even if you're not actually listening to music. Every time you encounter said neighbor, give them a friendly wave and continue to carry on. Oh. Story 33, the only time I've had that happen was in my first apartment. Older lady next door always wanted to ask personal questions about me since I was so young. When she asked overly personal questions, I'd usually just smile and jokingly say something like, you'll have to buy me dinner and a drink if you want to know me that well. Story 34, here are some tips from 150 Introvert 1. Don't go into much details. 2. Speak monotonously and without any interest. 3. Don't look him in the eyes. Better at the phone. 4. Never ask him and you, boo, and etc. And that's it. Give it some time. Anyone give about you? Story 35, I live in an apartment complex. And how do I wish my neighbors only ask questions? But my apartment is right next to the parking lot where the smokers hang out. Can't smoke inside the apartment. So if I leave the bedroom window open, they hear everything. So lots of awkward comments. I almost always visibly take it in stride and always reply with a smile and say something along the lines of, what the dude? Invariably, ITL elicit a chuckle and life moves on. I'm not trying to be friends with these people, but I still got to live with them. So even if I'm privately fuming, I keep the peace. That's part of being an adult in society. You can tell everyone off and mind their own business. Believe me, you definitely can, but it won't get you very far, especially since no one is a perfect angel and you'll invariably step on some toes yourself. So it's best to stay in your neighbor's good graces so when you're oh so accidentally that they cut you some slack. I need to remember to shut that window though. I mean, a little while ago, I was playfully messing around with my partner, making her a little miserable to let her know I love deeply. Well, I got a little carried away and she yelled out, get your finger out of my butt. She was loud. The window was open, and the next thing we heard was a small chorus of laughter. We both about died of embarrassment. Good times. Story 36, have some friends come over on the same date. Same time once a month. Make them dress all in matching clothing, head to toe, all one color. When they arrive, come out to greet them. Make some odd hand signals, and hit your chest a few times while screeching. They hand you a box wrapped in paper with strange symbols written all over it. You hand them something obscure like a rubber chicken or a VHS copy of Showgirls. Once the exchange is over, your friends leave and drive around the block, only to return to park in front of your neighbor's house, where they stare at his front door and write notes in tiny notebooks before leaving. Story 37, tell them a bunch of bullshit stories about your parents. You were born in Singapore, live a year in Germany, have a half-sister in Hungary. You understand 3 languages, but speak only 1. You're on your 3rd marriage. You were once part of a cult. You believed in Jesus once, but now know that his followers are all lizard people. You are against gays, but you don't mind with another man. You are against scissoring, but don't mind lesbian. You'd vote for Trump because we need to accelerate the apocalypse because we will all be taken to Planet X once all the work on this planet is finished. Tell them the Earth is flat on a spherical plane and that only certain minds can understand that. We live in a simulation, but we have to keep thinking it is a conspiracy unless we want it to end. I am not real, and none of this is real. Then just drop to the ground and pretend you have a seizure. If you've let your wife into the game, she'll come to your writhing body, screaming at the neighbor. What did you tell him? What did you do? Story 38, after acknowledging their existence and making brief chit-chat anyway. It was good talking to you. I'll catch you later, turn around, and go do your own thing. No explanation or opportunity for him to ask follow-up questions. It's awkward, and you come off as weird and standoffish. But works. For most people, this should be enough. Why, maybe obviously, depending on if you're a woman, and the dude is one of those dudes who refuses to take the hint because he knows he's got you trapped there. Story 39, I have the same problem, and my nosy neighbors live right up against my backyard in an RV with windows looking right over the fence. My solution has been to wear giant, obvious, noise-canceling headphones and listen to music or audiobooks while I garden, big sunglasses on sunny days. Story 40, thank my lucky stars for questions that are too personal. That's a bit of a long story that I'd rather not get into. Aha, or that's a bit personal, thanks for caring though. Having friendly relations with your neighbors is a godsend. When I was in an apartment block, we shared a floor with 6 other doors. Me and my ex ended up friends with almost everyone on the floor, and over the years we got their old hand-me-downs and they got ours. If one of us ran out of cash or food, the others chipped in to help. We fought off intruders, intervened in a drunken DV situation, and all sorts of stuff. It was loud and dramatic, but it was home, and we knew that they always had our backs, and we had theirs. Truly, a good neighbor culture in a place makes even the worst living conditions worth it. Story 41, I always thought this was the hardest thing to deal with. And a couple months back, I had a neighbor move in, and she believes she's a witch, like literally, no joke, a witch, magic and spells and whatnot. I generally can handle idle chit-chat just fine, but I turn a blank when she starts talking about energies and demons, and I just nod politely and try not to make jokes about Hogwarts. Story 42, shoot the breeze and ask them topical questions back. If you're in a rush, express in a pleasant way that you've got somewhere to be. Give them a wave and be off. If they're friendly, just be friendly back. People complain about being lonely all the time on this site, and then don't want to talk with the people that live next to them. Story 43, I have a neighbor who is always grilling me for information on anyone, friends, family, neighbors, etc. He tried to blackmail people. I don't talk to him at all any longer. Story 44, I read the best response to a rude or personal question is to ask the person in response. Why would you want to know that? I've used this after they stammer a bit and can come up with nothing better than curiosity. I say, really, and let the sound of crickets fill the air. They'll change the subject or go away. Do that every time they get rude or personal. They'll stop. Story 45, just be a bloke, take your lumps, and have an inconvenient and potentially awkward conversation. This is what community looks like. It ain't tidy. There isn't an accept deny button to save you from unwanted talks. I respect your question, and this is just my take, but this is a growing pain in the world of neighborly interaction. Eventually, you will know them well enough to joke about how they never stop yapping without hurting their feelings. Story 46, we have an extraordinarily interactive neighbor. He will walk his dog up our driveway if we're on the front porch, come over to chat when we have company, is always outside, and is just generally in everyone's business. He also noticed one of our elderly neighbors hadn't been out in a while and found him on the floor of his kitchen alive. Having had a stroke, he let our neighbor across the street borrow a ladder to break into her own house where she was locked out. He discovered that an unfriendly neighbor wasn't actually unfriendly, but blind and couldn't see when we waved at him. We all yell, "Hi, Robert." And he waves back. He puts on waders and rakes the algae from our communal pond. When we first moved in, he mowed our yard the first week and let us borrow his lawn mower until we bought our own. I feel safer knowing that someone is out there, keeping watch, being nosy, being kind, being a pain, being a helper, being a neighbor in the truest sense of the word. Story 47-1, build a higher fence, at least above their head too, or barbed weeks on fence. C.13, if one or two, so don't work. Don't respond to any questions. If continuing to be persistent, causally turn around, point to your ears, and say batteries out on the hearing aids, then turn away for whisper to neighbor can't talk. FBI are tapping my place. Story 48, try dealing with a neighbor that has dementia, Alzheimer's. I don't know what she really has. Same questions every single fucking time. Don't get me wrong, I feel sorry for her, but it gets tiring sometimes, especially for someone that likes to keep to himself. Now, I just lie to her and make up because she's just going to forget anyway. Story 49, you have to balance your need to be liked with your need for boundaries. Find out where your comfort level is when someone goes too far. You say, yeah, not comfortable sharing that. Some people don't understand boundaries, and it's okay to remind them it exists. Story 50, just be like, well, mate. That's a lot of questions with not so many answers. Pick 2, and that's all you're going to get. Works well for me. I'm a non-social kind of person. Have you ever been in a storm, Wally? I mean a real storm, not a thunderstorm, but a storm of fists raining down on your head, blasting you in the face. pummeling you in the stomach, hitting you in the chest so hard you think your heart's going to stop. You ever been in a storm like that, Wally? Story 51 of my old house. I had a very friendly neighbor that kind of reminded of Ned Flanders, but a little creepier. He would just come up to you and start talking about random stuff from the weather to what you ate for dinner. To avoid conversation with him, build a taller fence to block him out. It mostly worked. Story 52, put a podcast on while you're doing yard work. I'm an extrovert and am probably on the side of the overly friendly, always trying to start a conversation when we are both outside at the same time type of neighbor, but sometimes I do like just focusing on whatever I'm outside to do, and then I put a podcast on. If you do this, though, still wave and smile when you make eye contact with your friendly neighbor. Nothing wrong with some solo time yard work, but don't be about it. Story 53, I don't have one like that right now, but when I did, I talked to her and told her all about what I was doing and how my family was doing, and asked how her son's business and her grandchildren and great-grandchildren were doing, and also if she needed me to carry anything for her. I'm not sure how I would have reacted to a younger person, but when you're a 30-year-old dude and it's a tiny 90-year-old great-grandma, I feel like the natural response is to take the time to show respect and humor her. Story 54, I live in a trailer park in Central Texas, and all of my neighbors are Mexican immigrants. I happen to speak enough Spanish to hold a childlike conversation with them when we hang out or just chat, vice versa with their English. Personal questions don't really come up too often unless it's about food. We mostly just talk about our jobs and stories from work, and I listen to them talking about their desire to simply provide for their family. Then we just drink beer and smoke cigarettes. I love my neighbors. They're the best. When we mow our lawns, we always mow our side of their property up to the back of their house, instead of just mowing down the property line, which would leave an awkward-looking line of uneven grass. Then they do the same for their neighbor on the other side of their properties. It's great, and I love my trailer park community. Story 55, some of the other answers are good. Personally, I tend to give generic answers that don't say much. After a few of these and changing the topic, usually people get the hint. Being more forward and saying that's kind of personal works too is just a little awkward for me. Story 56, assume that you're the most interesting part of their day. Indulge them. You're a human. They're a human. Y'all should be able to have a positive relationship. Story 57, accept that that's a part of living next to people. Be patient and pleasant with them, and just deal with it or move to a secluded cabin and live like a hermit. Story 58, oh, I have this neighbor. He's a retired older man, and so he has nothing to do but smoke on a stoop and watch. I try to be kind when I first moved in. I'm a city kid and was raised to mind my business, and when I moved to the suburbs, the idea of actually knowing neighbors seemed sweet. He said something one day that just rubbed me the wrong way. Something along the lines of people my age not caring about anyone but ourselves. It was because I didn't move from the street so the snow plow could make a clean pass. It's not required, and I certainly wasn't the only vehicle. In another instance, he reported my car abandoned and had it towed. I drive a company vehicle most days, so my personal sat for a few weeks. The final straw was his discussions about neighbors to neighbors. Because he's always outside, he takes note of people's work schedules, purchases, spending habits. He saw a box for a new TV, piece that it was mine, and had a discussion with another neighbor about how my unit had a new 65. Who knows if he also could have said to someone she works sporadic hours, drives these vehicles, and is a young woman. My husband and I have purchased several cars, and he searched their values. It's invasive. None of his business, and ultimately could put me and my household in danger. While he may not have bad intentions, someone else might. My husband still makes small talk out of guilt and empathy toward a lonely old man. He mentioned to him that he got the vibe your wife doesn't like me, and several weeks later approached me about it. I told him I have no interest in conversation. Straight up, I don't like you. He hasn't spoken to me since and actively avoids me. Story 59, talk to them back and ask about them. They're being friendly and maybe lonely, not nosy. If you're going into your yard garden to do some work, know you're going to be outside for a while, and they may come out. Set your phone timer to 6 minutes or something to remind you of that thing you need to do. My elderly neighbor sometimes talks my ear off, but she also takes in my parcels, looks out for the house when we are away, and also is genuinely an interesting person.